understanding the role of decision makers early on is the most important things for us. Guys, we have a little different format today. We're going to role play.
It's role play Monday.
And I was surprised by this because usually I get some notes from Tyler and it's a topic base and I open it up and it's 13 pages of notes. And I'm like, okay. But we are going to walk through 4 client scenarios. They're calling you with a new potential project. And all 4 of them, especially the 4th one, I relate with. But you're going to hear these and be like, oh my God, that client reached out to me, last week. Or, hey, I've had 6 of those inquiries. And we're going to walk through what's a green flag, what's a red flag, and why what my green and red flags might be different than what Tyler's are, and what yours might be. So,
and this is not just for contractors or builders. If you're a client or a designer or somebody who's not selling the jobs like we are contractors to these clients, and you want to understand what you should and shouldn't say, or what makes a high percentage, high caliber, high quality lead, give a listen, because I feel like we spell that out pretty clearly as far as what's a green flag and what's a red flag. So if you want to know how to approach a contractor, how to establish a new relationship, it's not any different. It could be with an architect, it could be with an interior designer. How do you engage with these professionals within the service industry? It's a really great tool that you can use to understand what that process should look like for you.
Well, before we get into it, thanks to our sponsor, Andersen Windows, you got your windows. Dude, were they heavy?
So I didn't really think that much about it. I mean, I just feel like everything's heavy at 40 years old. But the guy delivering the windows was like, and he works for Andersen. He's worked for Andersen for 30 years. It didn't come from a vendor. It came directly from distribution. So he brings windows and doors to lumberyard and unloads them. Mm-hmm. And he was like, dude, what type of windows did you get? These things are so heavy. And I was like, oh man, I forgot about that. But my buddy Nick just did tell me to be prepared. So yeah, some of the casements, I'm not going to lie, we got them into the storage bin and we were fully sliding them to the back of the unit because I was like, this is way too difficult to carry. And they had handles. Yeah. Like they had handles, but I was like, I'm not lifting this 40 feet and carrying it down the other end of this. So yes.
Fun fact, the handles are designed to be carried 1 per person, not hugged like a teddy bear.
Absolutely not. So the biggest, there were a couple of doors that were large that were almost, they were heavy for 2 people.
Yeah.
But we got it done.
We can't complain about it because they are incredibly nice. We got the front of our we live in a row house, so we got the front done, and we're not even done with the install, but even Meg was like, I feel like it's quieter in here. I'm like, it should be. And then the other day it was like 4 degrees outside, and Ken was over and we were just chatting about windows because he wants to do windows at his house. I'm like, dude, put your hand on that glass. And he puts his hand, and he's like, it's not cold. I'm like, no, it's 9 degrees outside.
Yeah.
Like it's so having that triple pane is so nice. And the fact that we can do it with a double hung that is, basically historically accurate to the front of our building and have the high performance aspect of it, game changer.
Yeah, and I'm not complaining about the weight of anything. To me, I'm going to lift those things twice. Once at delivery and once into the opening, and then for the next 100 years, I don't have to lift those. Well, definitely not me, but nobody's going to have to lift those things again. So it's the same thing. People complain about, oh, those dirt bike boots are heavy. I'm like, dude, I'm not riding the bike itself. Like they're protective. I don't care if they're heavy or not. So yeah, super pumped with that. Seamless. Dube is a pro back in that thing in my snow covered lot that I plowed out for him. So it's also, go on the Andersen website, check out their triple plane, but they're offering them from 100 series up. So it's not like this is just an A series window, right? You can get triple pane in 100 series too.
Yeah.
So there's all the options as far as affordability and budget and design go. So you are not limited to just an A series or an upper level Andersen window, which is really cool.
And guys, before the few of you that live in the ideal climate that don't need triple pane, we get it. You have the perfect weather. We don't. We have -9 degrees the other night to 109 degrees. So
Yeah, and humid.
So thanks to our sponsor, Harnish Workwear. Guys, we talked about the sweatshirts. We talk about the Creator One pants. We talk about how warm they are. We are going to be through winter here soon, and no better time to get your whole company some new swag. The H Label program, it is literally the best fitting t-shirt on the market. We have them from Modern Craftsman, NS Builders, Materia, Motif, Contract Coalition Summit. Like, it's literally my entire drawer is just Harness t-shirts. But one of the things I realized, and I was chatting with a friend of mine the other day, because he was like, I want to get some swag. I just don't know. I gotta work on like my logo. I'm like, dude, they will handle that for you.
Yeah.
Just reach out to Alex, say, hey, this is what I'm looking to do. And I mean, a little behind the scenes, I had connected Alex with someone. This was a couple of years ago when they were starting out, and he kept me on the email, and there's this back and forth of like, hey, this is like, hey, what do you want to do here? Back and forth. And I watched it basically never come to fruition. He never ordered the shirts. I was like, Alex, just mock it up.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want? Oh, I want here. What do you think of this mock up? Because I'm telling you, most guys aren't as picky as me. And like, they just want to see their stuff on a t-shirt. And if you make that super easy for them, then you're going to explode. And like, guys will just order shirts. So my point is, like, great for Harnish to like expedite that process, but great for you where it's like, dude, just send them your logo and be like, I want some Harnish t-shirts.
Yeah.
And they'll get you a mock-up. You give them a thumbs up and they're going to get you them, and you can have them here for spring, summertime when the weather turns, and you'll be in the best t-shirt on the game.
Even if you want something different than your normal logo, just to switch things up, something fun for the summer, different season, definitely hit them up and they'll be able to help you get something that's on brand, but maybe just freshened up some.
So harnishworkwear.com. You didn't even watch.
I know. I was trying to fire off one more text message before hopping on here, be as efficient as possible.
Yeah, buddy. Time, man.
One of those days, dude, I've been in the office way too much today. Just nonstop. Tired of it. I need to get outside.
Yeah.
Going stir crazy, but it's also 20 degrees out and everything's still frozen, and well, that's life right now. So on the podcast the past few weeks, we've been talking about initial conversations with clients, lead generation, how we're intaking those leads, and more along the same lines this week. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to create 4 hypothetical leads and go through those leads, I guess, dig into what those conversations look like, what we see is good about them, what potentially could create issues, and then just have a discussion based on those, what I would say are live call scenarios, right? Mm-hmm. And I want to go through some of the questions that we ask, just generally speaking, and then what type of options we're going to commit to moving forward. Because there's times where you get a lead where it's like, you know what, I don't want to do anything with this lead. And there's times where maybe I want to sign somebody up for pre-con. The job feels okay to me, but I'm not 100% sold on this. Maybe I'll sell that as a consulting. Let's see if this is just a feasibility study at this point. So I want to walk through 4 different conversations if we have time for that, and then just base those leads on what we think is good about them, what's bad about them, and how we would potentially move forward.
Let's do it. By the way, guys, if we shared our lead intake form, which is like a template on how to essentially start this process. If you want that, just go to our Instagram. There's a post about it, and then below, if you just comment lead intake, we'll actually send you the actual template for you to use. Or you can be on our newsletter and you would have gotten it for free. And
Duh. That's a no-brainer.
moderncraftsman.co, sign up for the newsletter, you just get this stuff for free. I realized I was looking at the list of stuff we've just given away for free in our emails, and I'm like, we should be charging for this. But
I know. It's a lot.
But hey, if you're part of the newsletter, you get it for free.
And if you're here, we appreciate it. So,
I was reading through these scenarios. So yeah, it sounds like we're gonna do a little role play today, Tyler.
yeah, man.
Right.
So I was like thinking about how that's going to work, and I was structuring this conversation a few different ways, and I'm like, I think I have an idea of how this is going to work. It could fall flat on its face, but I think it's going to be good. Essentially, before we sell any project, before we sell the construction contract, the pre-construction contract, what I'm looking to do, what Nick's looking to do, is assess the risk or potential risks associated with this project, ensure that there's alignment or confirm that there's misalignment, try and understand what the scope of services may be, because it's not one and done. You know, it's not always the same thing based on a client's need. And then assess how much protection for us that project requires. So there's a handful of questions that we can dig into. You probably heard these before. A lot of them are from the intake form. This might be a little more high level just to create a conversation based on these leads. But question one, I mentioned this before. How do you hear about us? What made you reach out? What's your timeline? And that's going to tell us a lot. It's going to tell us if this is something that they're behind the eight ball on, if there's a lot of urgency there, what their intent is. It's going to explain whether they're familiar with our process, other people's processes, what type of pressure. Is there emotional pressure on this project, right? We discussed that before. Is there a baby on the way? Or what type of considerations do we have? What their timeline looks like? Is it something that we can even get to? Or are we going to waste time on this? A couple of just red flags are people trying to force a project to happen before I'm ready for it to happen, or what's the next step, or let's bypass the next step. That's going to be a red flag for me. A lack of investment on their own behalves in the process, right? If you've done no homework, if you've done nothing to get this job off the ground and it's your project, that's going to be a red flag for me, because if I want something done, I'm going to start figuring out what needs to happen to get that ball rolling. I don't want panic-driven or panic-induced decisions. So typically, somebody who's really looking to get a job going immediately and has time constraints is going to be tough for me. And then another red flag is just, hey, we found you online. We found you on a Facebook page. We Googled your name and TRG Home Concepts showed up. So that's question one for me. Nick, you see question two?
Question two, so how are you hoping this project changes how you live in the house? What are your needs and what is important to you? So there's a handful of reasons why this matters, but it's really kind of centered around finding clarity in what they want. And I think the biggest thing that we run into is chaos. And when there's lack of structure or lack of clarity of what they're hoping to accomplish, it's just a chaotic process, and oftentimes gets kind of dumped on the builder. So, really gets them to think about the outcome of the project, and what they value in the process. I think for you, Tyler, like we've talked about you renovating in someone's home, like the value that they put on being able to live there and feel as though they're not impacted. I shared a story, about my house, like when they're considerate about working in someone's house and like how that impacts your daily life. That there's value to that, and not every client's going to understand that. Emotional versus transactional. So for us, understanding like how what we're doing is emotionally taxing them, and we want someone also to be invested emotionally. Like this is not just a contract, not just it's $100,000 or it's this many dollars. It is deeply rooted in their life and what they're again emotionally invested. And then of course, like just understanding the program of the project, what big picture, what does this mean? How does it impact their daily life? How does it impact their home and their, their living situation? But when there's when there is lack of direction, it leads to that chaos. And I think chaos is something that ultimately makes a project fall apart. I think about a lot of our projects where it's like when it gets chaotic, oftentimes we internally will have a conversation like, hey, we need a reset. Like, hold on, stop, clean up, start over, because we're trending down a path that is just, too uncomfortable here.
Yeah, and I think it's so easy to consider all the financial aspects of a project and the decisions and the timeline and the schedule and the fixtures and finishes, but you need to be able to properly or adequately quantify the emotional side of a job. Why are these people doing it? How's it going to change their life? What are their needs? So just put some consideration and a little bit of weight on that. It's not just about, and that's part of it, the timeline, the budget, the design, everything else, but there's other things to consider to ensure alignment. So the third question here, do you have a design in place? Have you worked with a contractor similar to us before? And I'm using this to potentially expose an education gap or somebody who's just unfamiliar with the process. Potentially they have not worked with another contractor. I want to know that. What has their experience been like? Do you have a design in place? Again, that's going to be very telling to me that they're not that far along this process. It's also a huge foot in the door for me because I can help be the liaison. And it's this segue into our entire process from pre-construction through the actual project, through buttoning up and post-construction. So a really important question for me to understand where they are within the process, how much they've invested emotionally from a time perspective and money-wise, and then I can start gauging them and what their experience has been like to see if my company and what I do well is a good fit for them.
Decision makers are, I think, one of the easiest things to skip over in the beginning, and I can tell you plenty of times that our projects have fallen apart because of not understanding who is the real decision maker. And then there's like a separate layer of that, like who is the influencer. They might not be a decision maker, but who is influencing what decisions they're making and how they're making them. So understanding that the role of decision makers early on is, one of the most important things for us, because I think especially in like a spouse configuration, like we have had projects where we are only working with, say, the wife, and we're getting even all the way to contract, and then we start the project, and then the husband's like, wait a second, I didn't agree to this, or this isn't what I expected. It's like, I thought we established that she was the decision maker, and come to find out, it's like, no, they were always the decision maker together, and we were, we had a misunderstanding of that. But I do think, the bottleneck there is when there is, like, when you're say you're directing a question towards one person, and it's like, okay, I just need to check in with whoever. It's like, well, why aren't they in the meeting? Why aren't they part of this? So establishing who they are, but also like requiring their involvement is important, because otherwise you're literally doing the same thing 2 to 3 times, where it's just like you're creating inefficiency because you're talking to someone that doesn't ultimately have the autonomy to answer for themselves.
I mean, it's also, right, how much time you're going to have to dedicate to this entire process. And if you're having to have that conversation twice or go back and make fixes, you should know that from the outset. Mm-hmm. Do you have any sort of budget in place? And this is, again, I spoke to how I'm integrating this or implementing this filter. It might not be in my preliminary conversation with them. It might be in the second email, just so that I create a little bit of comfort and I'm not just coming at them with how much money do you want to spend? Because ultimately that number, it does tell me something, but it doesn't tell me anything. If there's no expectations, if I don't understand what their needs are, if I don't understand what their timeline, all these other things that we've discussed, the budget doesn't really tell me anything. I don't have a design in place. So it is a threshold. It is a barrier to entry. But for me, it's more about them. Do they trust me? Are they willing to have that conversation? Is their number realistic, just high level? What type of willingness do they have to budge with that, either that number, with scope, and just to start that conversation if they've given any thought to it. So again, the budget to me, I always used to think was a true indicator of whether that client, that project was a fit for me. But I've just learned later on in my experience, in my career, that without all this other information, that budget number really doesn't tell me anything.
Yeah, you're kind of throwing a number at something that has no context. And I think for a lot of just clients in general, like they're going to miscommunicate the budget almost always, whether it's too high, too low, and it becomes this like mental anchor that you have to work through. The one of the questions, even this is just like almost like a human psychology thing, where I was on a project earlier today and my super looked at me, goes, "What's your concern?" And I was like,
Do I look concerned?
I obviously did. And I didn't, like, there was no intention of like mentioning what was going on in my mind. I was just kind of like taking in some details that I was like, all right, we should do this better later. But because I was prompted with that question, like I felt obligated to answer him. And I think it's the same thing with a client, where it's like, just ask what, like, hey, at this point in the process, like what are you most concerned about? And they'll be upfront with you. It's like, I think that you're great. I'm just worried that I'm not going to be able to afford you, or that this project is bigger than I actually want to take on. So asking the question like point blank kind of breaks that barrier and gives you the ability to answer that concern. It's like, oh, I'm really concerned with this going over budget. Great. This is how we're going to prevent it going over budget.
Sweet. So what those questions are the basis for how we are going to grade and assess every one of these leads. So we're not going to go through really what each question entails. I do want to briefly mention the question as we get to the answers here, but the first lead that's going to come in is going to be a lead that is aligned with our values, with our systems, and they're ready to proceed. So what made you reach out? What did you hear about us? It was a referral from one of our neighbors. We've been following your journey for nearly a decade. The reason for me that's aligned, they've seen my work in person. They live in a neighborhood where I work, and they've followed our journey, which we've documented very publicly to understand what we do, how we do it, and they have some sort of basis for who we are. So for everyone, what we're going to do is I'm going to go through these questions. I'm going to be answering them as if I'm the client answering those questions. And then after, I want to recap basically what we're hearing and then what we sell to this client and why. So maybe I'll just run through these questions real quickly, the answers, and then we can both dig into what we're hearing from it and what we're going to sell from it.
Sure.
Second question, how are you hoping this project changes how you live in the home and what's important to you? So for this client, living in the home during the renovation is very important. They have young kids who are in school, and they do not want that disrupted or want to have to temporarily relocate. We're not necessarily concerned with how much money it costs. Obviously, they have a budget, but maintaining communication, sanity, and peace during this process is most important to us. Have you worked with a contractor like us before? Do you have a design in place? They've not had good luck with contractors in the past. They felt that what was sold to them was not necessarily executed. They understand they're partially to blame because they didn't fully understand the process and the differences between contractors, but they feel they have a better understanding of that now. And that's why they're coming to us. They want to understand how we fit into their process, what is required on their end. And they don't have a design in place, but they're helping us to connect that there. Who's involved with the decision making? Generally speaking, they both want to handle the decision making. They work full time, but they do have the ability to step away and get things answered on a timely basis because they understand how that affects the progress of the job. Have you considered budget? We're hoping to be in the $250,000 range. We understand that may be tight, and we're willing to concede some items or some finishes, potentially phase the project to meet our needs. We just really don't want to pay twice for things. So what concerns or hesitations do you have? The biggest concern is that they hire someone and they do not meet the expectations that they set forth. They're willing to put trust into this process, but they need to ensure that their expectations are aligned and that trust and that communication is maintained throughout the process. So they understand that we're the professionals. They trust our judgment. They trust our experience. So Nick, what do you hear with regard to your company here or just this client?
They're ready. Like, they're interested in working. They've done their due diligence. They have general experience. It sounds like a client that we actually just finished a renovation for, and they came to us. They had done similar projects before. They had frustrating experiences, and they decided to come into this with a different approach, where it's like, listen, I'm just going to be fully transparent. This is my budget. This is what I'm hoping to do. I'm going to outline my expectations, but I'm still concerned with, you not meeting them. And for us, what we kind of do in that situation is back up and walk them through our process directly tied to what they're concerned about. It's like, you're worried about us not meeting your expectations. Well, here's how we're going to prevent us being misaligned. Here's the way we're going to communicate through the project. Here's how we're going to set the expectation now, and then how we're going to communicate throughout to make sure that we deliver on that. And it gives us the confidence, because what we're doing is we're kind of pushing aside all of the transactional things, because we've set, hey, we understand it's at least $250,000. That's our budget. We know it might go up. We understand that. They're basically coming in and being like, hey, here's all the information you're going to ask me. Push that aside. I want you to focus on proving to me that you're going to meet our expectation.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, they check all the boxes. If I got a lead like this is definitely, I'm going to introduce the next step, right? They check the boxes as far as they want to live in the home, their timeline's appropriate, their budget is appropriate, they're willing to concede, they understand that their budget's tight, that they may not get everything that they want. It's just a very realistic lead for me, but they're still leaning on our professional experience, right? They understand that they're not the pros. They're putting that in our court. They want somebody to trust, and they want somebody who can meet their expectations. So for me, this is like, I'm ready to sign you up for a pre-construction process. I'm ready to meet you in person. I'm ready to come to your house. I'm ready to take the next step on what this job potentially could turn into. So for me, this is like an ideal lead that comes into my plate. And sometimes there's leads like this. Sometimes they have certain aspects of this, but for me, this is one where I'm like, yeah, slam dunk. You said all the right things. I'm ready to take the next step and move ahead towards pre-construction. So that would be a full pre-construction package, developing budget, scope, schedule, moving towards bringing in, starting to figure out what design is and all that, and moving towards a construction contract.
Yeah, I was gonna read call number 2, budget sensitive but honest.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I feel like this is one a lot of us deal with. Like, they're honest, but budget's tight, and these are the ones that you can get kind of emotionally attached to. It's like, I got to figure this out. Like, they're so great, and
so this is where it's like, how are you going to protect yourself if you so choose to move forward?
All right, so you guys are going to relate to this. So we're new homeowners. What made you reach out, and how'd you hear about us? Hey, we're new homeowners, and we bought a very old home that's going to require some professional expertise. We really want someone who can walk us through the process and tailor it to suit our needs. We've heard nightmare stories about people getting way over their head, and the last thing we want to do is get over our skis. And we are looking for someone that understands, while we do not have unlimited funds, we do want to do things right. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. And we want to base our plan of attack on that. So this is someone that understands it's going to cost some money, and also understands that they don't have unlimited funds, but want to do it right. So I think early positioning of they're looking for a partner. That's what I immediately hear. They're looking for a partner to see if they can bring this to fruition.
But just beware that they're new homeowners, right? Well, so is the experience there.
That's in my world an orange flag, maybe a yellow flag. How are you hoping this project changes how you live in the house and what's important to you? Well, this is our forever home, and we want to be spending money our money wisely, and if we choose finishes that consume too much of our budget and our resources are better spent elsewhere, we will trust your judgment, but we need a proper steward for the project. We want mostly to create more functionality and comfortability within the space. We simply do not understand the steps needed to get from A to B. So again, like they're well informed, they are focused on the right things. But they are willing to sacrifice on some of the finish and what we would consider like the cool factor might going into a project. So this could play against your overall goal for the business. How have you worked with a contractor like us before, and do you have a design in place? This is our first time doing a substantial renovation, and we have explored our options and given a lot of thought to what we want, but we have not hired a professional at this point. We are not avoiding that. We just want to ensure that we are following the right procedure and not putting the cart before the horse. Again, we're willing to spend the money. We're just apprehensive to spend it I can't say that word.
Frivolously.
Oh, man. Frivolously. It's always one word you got to throw in here. Tyler typed this up and was like, next.
I also didn't edit any of these, so I'm somewhat concerned with you reading these and being like, that makes no sense whatsoever.
Well,
but
here
so
we
far,
are.
so good.
Spending it not wisely twice or having an open checkbook. I'm glad everyone thinks I'm an idiot at this point. Again, maybe red flag, like, hey, this is our first time doing a substantial renovation. Again, well educated, they've explored options, they've given it a lot of thought. They're looking for someone to guide them in the direction to do this correctly. Who's involved in making decisions on this project? Well, my wife will be making the majority of the decisions. My job is pretty consuming, and she has a better idea of what our family needs are than mine. Literally, like 90% of our clients, like, oh, my wife will be, in charge. Like we have had projects literally go all the way to complete. My camera keeps zooming in and out. All the way to completion. And I'll never forget walking into the house, and there was one detail he wanted, and he was like, hey, where is that? And I'm like, what? He's like, where? Like, I know we did it. He's like, I remember talking about it 2 years. I'm like, you haven't been here? Like, you're not involved at all? And then we show him. He's like, oh, that looks so good. I'm like, this is crazy. But I mean, that could be a red flag. Typically, number one, like they're establishing, hey, my wife is in charge and is the decision maker. But is that really the case? I can tell you in my personal situation, Meg and I are doing a renovation. Meg was like, I only have these two desires in the whole project, and so far that's been a lie. She has
actually told us.
Like, actually, no, you actually want to be the decision.
You have way more to say than I thought.
Yeah, I was like, you wanted a light fixture and a particular handrail. Now we're talking about the finish on the cabinetry. Have you talked about budget yet, or even a rough range? We have an idea of how much we want to spend on the homes based on our savings and some of the equity, and it's important to maintain those numbers. That being said, we do not fully understand all the costs associated with this type of project. What I'm hearing in this situation is like they have a number in mind, but they're unwilling to communicate that in fear that they might pigeonhole themselves into not enough or work with someone that is going to kind of squeeze the most amount of juice out of that for their the builder's own benefit. But it's a really important thing to kind of get out in the open, because this is ultimately what's going to control the budget. If there's $100,000 cap, it's like, okay, well, I need to carry that with contingency. And then lastly, what concerns or hesitations do you have right now? We are concerned with starting something that we cannot finish. We understand that an old project can have a lot of unforeseen, and we would prefer to have a comprehensive understanding of what we may run into once the project has begun. This is literally like, queuing you up for pre-construction. It's like, hey, before we get into this, why don't we spend some time and think about the quote unquote master plan of this project, so we can help you get to the result that you're looking for, and then figure out, based on your current financial situation, how much of that you can deploy into this project now. If this is truly your forever home, how do we actually move towards that? And that might not be everything right now. And the reality is it's probably not. But let's at least go through the process of understanding the big picture, and then we can figure out how we tackle it.
Yeah. So for me, this client, it just sounds as though they have anxiety about the process. They're inexperienced. There's a lack of trust at this point. There's a lot of things that they're doing right. They're open to concessions. They're open to learning more. They're open to you handling the process. But for me, there's just a lack of trust right now, which is the biggest hurdle, right? They don't really understand the process. They don't understand who we are. They don't really trust this entire system, this entire process. So I would consider moving these people into a pre-construction, but maybe instead of a full package where it's like, this is going to be a significant investment of time and money and resources for you. Maybe it's a high level feasibility study, right? Where it's a quarter of the amount of time that we're going to bring them in, and just begin to set them up with an architect, but begin to start doing some high level budgeting where we're allocating hours to this process and we're starting to build that trust for them. I'm not sure if I want this job 100%, right? So depending on my workload, my schedule, maybe these are lifelong great clients that, right, it's their home that they're going to live in forever. It's an older home. There's a lot of things that are speaking my language, but maybe I'm just not certain of the type of client yet. So I want to engage them and I want to take the next step, but I'm not ready to say, hey, spend all of this money and all of this time with me, and I'm going to guarantee that this is going to go exactly how you're anticipating and expecting, because I just don't know what that is right now, and they're inexperienced. So this might be, hey, here's a low level lift. We're going to be doing a feasibility study and have some preliminary conversations as far as what design goes, maybe set you up with some meeting for some architects, and maybe you're going to budget a certain amount of hours towards that might roll into a full-fledged pre-construction. But for me, I'm still holding back a little bit right here. If something came up that were more of a fit, like if I got this email and the first email at the same time, I'm going to spend more of my energy on the first email versus this one. Not a terrible lead, but again, there's a few red flags to me. They're also saying a few things right. So that's where I put this one on the scale. Like, depending on my workload, depending on how much liability I want to assume at this point, it's a maybe for me. Opportunity there to like hit a home run, but also opportunity for somebody who lacks experience to be like, oh man, what did I get myself into?
And I think this is like going to their comment, like you really need to be the steward for this project. They have no experience. I mean, we've worked with plenty of these clients, and ultimately they look at you as the professional. So if you're someone that doesn't have a process to help guide a client through it, it's going to be a disaster. Like they're without saying it, they are looking for someone to hold their hand and work through the entire process and guard the constraint, specifically in this case financially, to protect them. And when stuff unravels, you will be at fault regardless of the nuances behind it, because they looked at you as the professional. Like, you're telling me I can do it, I can do this. And they want to trust you in that process.
Yeah. Are you taking the next steps here?
What, the next call?
No, with this lead.
I'm with you. I think depending on the situation, I would consider doing this project. No, I absolutely would. We would continue the conversation and see if we can in fact be a good steward to the project. We have a list of clients that I would add to some of our best clients that we've ever worked for that fell into this category.
Yeah, I mean, there's the potential to hit a home run and have a client for life.
Yeah.
For me, I want to go into that relationship with a bit of apprehension and a bit of protection on my own head, that I'm not signing somebody up right off the bat for 6 months worth of headache.
I'll tell you the honest truth here. This is the one that I'm actually very good at walking away from. meaning like I know that either it will be a home run or I'm going to walk away because it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Like this is, there's two more on this list here that I'm probably not as good of walking away from, specifically the last one. But in this case, like I feel like this is where I can sniff out whether it's a good job or not for us.
Sure. All right. So call 3 is it's just going to seem like there's not much alignment there. So what made you reach out? How did you hear about us? We found you on Facebook. We are closing on the home in a month. We want all of the bathrooms renovated and the kitchen completed prior to moving in. I'm probably at this point fully checked out, but let's keep moving on.
You know how like everyone's like, dude, I got this email. It's like, yeah, we all get this email, guys. Like they go into panic mode of like, we want all this done. We just bought the house. Like we're ready to go. And
dude, but this used to get me like so pumped. 10 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, hell yeah, I'll make I'll make whatever happen.
These were COVID projects.
Yeah, nobody's in the house. I can work 100 hours a day if I want to. Yeah, not anymore. So how are you hoping this project changes how you live in the house? What's important to you? We're not looking to change much, and we understand what it should cost. We just need updated bathrooms and space for the kids in the basement. The bathrooms are all fine. They just need new finishes, so it shouldn't be too much work. Multiple red flags in there, right? It's like, it shouldn't be much work. It's just simple updating. They just need new finishes. Like, to me, it's this person doesn't really understand the potentials of what we could run into. They're not looking to change much. They understand what it should cost. A handful of red flags in there for me. Have you worked with a contractor like us before? Do you have a design in place? Typically, we've done all the renovations ourselves. We would do that in this house, but we really need to be out of our current house and do not have the time to do so. I don't think that we need a designer because it's pretty straightforward. Again, unless you're like just starting out and you're trying to dial your processes and you really need the work, all things are pointing in the direction of no here. Who's involved in the decision-making process on this project? My wife will handle most of the material selections. I'll be able to come to some meetings, but only if they don't interfere with my travel. I prefer phone calls over emails. I need all the financial aspects of the job ran by me for approvals before anything takes place. There's a lot of complications there. There's a lot of double work there. It seems as though they want to be a part of this, but they're not willing to dedicate the time to it consistently. Have you discussed budget? We've renovated 3 houses on our own, so we understand the cost of the work. We just do not have the time. Ultimately, we do not want to spend more than $100,000 renovating the 3 bathrooms and the basement, but that's our ceiling, and we expect a certain level of finish given the budget. Okay, so depending on where you work, the type of jobs, what type of renovations these are, maybe they are more cosmetic, maybe the budget is substantial. Mm-hmm. For what you do. Like that budget may not be substantial for everyone, but there's a lot of people and a lot of jobs where it's like $100,000 to do a couple of facelifts on bathrooms, and a basement just for space is decent money. So now like you're considering this, right?
You just added one green flag that's wiped out all the red flags.
Yeah, but like you have to remember their perspective of what this may cost is probably skewed because they're looking at it. We've done all the work ourselves. We understand what it costs. No, you don't. You understand what some materials may cost, but you don't understand the cost of it. So maybe their $100,000 seems realistic for what you do, but they may have an expectation of a much higher level of service or project than you're willing to offer for that price point. So that was like the one, like Nick said, maybe where I'm checked out. Maybe you pulled me right back in. So what concerns or hesitations do you have right now? If we're paying you good money, I want the job done right, and I do not want to have to babysit. I understand the work being done, so I do not want the wool pulled over my eyes. Like I said, I could do this all myself. I just do not have the time. To me, this is just belittling the value of our work, where it's like, if you could do it yourself, you might as well just do it yourself. If
hiring you for help.
Correct. And it's like, at the end of the day, if you're a professional and there's a client who can do it themselves, they're two different things. Even if they have all the time in the world, you do not. So maybe their level of quality is better than you can execute, but they also are not paying for labor. They're not paying for time. So you just have to realize that a client doing work and you doing work, regardless of quality, anything else, it's two different things. So there's a massive difference there.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
Did you write this?
I did.
Did you think of a particular client writing it?
Probably many, right? So like, and
there
I
is
was
one
also
blaring in my like mind about this, and it's like, and he fits the like. There's a half a dozen that fit this mold, but there's one, and it was at a time where we needed a job, and I was trying to plug him in, this project in, and it's like literally verbatim, like everything is exactly all the red flags, but the only difference was like their budget was good, but not great.
Yeah.
And it was just, he's like, I just don't have the time. And I'm like, no problem. We'll do it. Like, we're great. Like, don't even worry about it. And it was the same decision make. And he ghosted us. Like I chased it hard, and I was like, and he was like, well, can we value engineer that? I'm like, no problem. We don't need a designer. No problem. Like, it's just cosmetic. No problem. I'm doing all this work. And he ghosts us. And then 6 months later, my painter posts the house on his story. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, you ended up painting that house? He goes, remind me to talk to you when I see you on site. And I see him. I'm like, what? He goes, dude, that job turned into a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, yeah. He's like, you're lucky you didn't do it. I'm like, I'm kind of lucky he just ghosted me, because
you were ready to.
I was like all for it. I'm like, yeah, I can knock this out, make some money.
No, I think that's like the basis for so much of this. Honestly, writing these, it's like, what are all the things somebody's going to tell me that are a huge turnoff for me, but then like, what might they hook me back in with? And I think for me, the position I'm in now, obviously this is a no-brainer, no, but I have to bring myself back to 10, 12 years ago where I started my business 15 years ago. So 10 years ago, where I was looking to possibly grow some, I was looking to get more jobs, to be able to put people on those jobs. And this would be a job that like would have all the red flags, but I'd say, hey, you know what? I could plant somebody there, and there's enough money there that if things slow down or I have another job going on, it's going to make me money. And I want the people who are in that position where they need the money, or they're looking to keep people busy, and there's a lot of red flags, but then there's one thing that's pulling you back in, just to consider what we're considering at the point that we are with this project. And you can move the numbers around and make that $100,000 be whatever it is. There's always going to be one thing that's going to be pulling you back in. You have to understand, like, you cannot just turn a blind eye to all of the red flags because there's one aspect of this job and you have a couple of guys that you need to keep busy, because it's not the right move in my opinion. So for here, selling anything to this client is just exposing me to risk and creating a lot of liability on my behalf. So for me, it's a polite bow out, which I've also, with these type of clients, have gone really poorly and have basically, I guess, felt insulted that I didn't want their project, and essentially say to me like, our money's no good with you. So bowing out at this point with this type of client for me is, I'm going to assume all the blame as to why I'm bowing out, that I don't think that I can fit their needs, that my timeline doesn't fit, that I don't have the people to put on that. Whatever the reason is, I'm assuming all liability for this and bowing out, because I don't want to insult this client and have this turn into something more than it needs to be.
All right. This one hits home.
This is Nick's like, dude, this is your friggin' silver bullet.
What made you reach out, and how did you hear about us? We just purchased a beautiful 3-acre lot, and we want to build our dream home. We have money set aside for this, and we really want to get moving ASAP. We understand that there's a lot of design and feasibility work that needs to happen, but time is of the essence. Great. They're ready. They got money. They got land. They want to rock and roll. I'm in. Let's go.
They want to go yesterday. Nick's
That's
like,
yeah,
done.
I'm done. Like I will design and build. Let's go.
And it's funny because for me, this is like, all right, all sounds good. Oh, they want it happen yesterday. That's a red flag for me. But for you, you're like, dude,
Okay.
strike while the
Yeah.
iron's hot.
Let's go. How are you hoping the project changes how you live in the house? What's important to you? We want this house to check all the boxes. We've worked hard to afford this, and it has to be perfect. Perfect. Great. I'm in. We have been unhappy with the layout of our house for years, and it's never been great for having guests over or socializing. So we're at a stage of life that we want to enjoy the fruits of our labor now rather than wait any longer. Hey, I'm with you. Let's, I agree. I want to enjoy that too. Have you ever worked with a contractor like us? We've worked with 5 or 6 builders in the past, but none of them appear to be as good as you. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It is really critical that this project checks all the
stroking of the ego. I'm in love.
I'm in love. It is really critical that this project checks all the boxes for us. It's our dream home. We're not looking to do this again. Dream home? Yep, I'm in. Like, I want to build this. Who's involved in making decisions at this project? My husband wants nothing to do with the daily tasks of decision making. He wants what he wants and expects to pay for it, but does not want this to become his full-time job. Great. We're white glove. Like, we'll just build your house and it's going to be great. Have you talked about budget? Yeah, we understand the cost of doing this type of projects. Again, we're not concerned with the money as much as ensuring that we get everything that we want and it's delivered on time. Okay, well, I like a challenge, delivered on time. We haven't determined what time is, but and what concerns or hesitations do you have right now? We're concerned that we will have wasted too much time up front on the planning, which is going to prolong the build. We have the resources to get moving on this, and we don't need all the answers right now. Okay, well, typically I like to go through pre-construction, but what's the worst that can happen? That is literally like what is going on in my mind. I'm like, okay, but the reality, like, then I go and this is how this plays out. I rush over to Julian's office. I'm like, dude, client, dream house, land, money, look, like they're ready to go.
Let's go now.
And what's the build time? 12 months. He goes, what? I'm like, we could figure this out. He's like, is there a design?
Stack trades, stack days.
Is there a design? No, not yet. Is there an architect? No, they're interviewing. He's like, Nick, like, come on back down to earth. Like, let's be realistic. Is this going to work out? Well, I mean, I don't know. And it's like, shit, like, no, he's right. We're skipping the most critical part that we communicate and sell. And that is the planning and pre-construction. That is what sets a project up for success and ultimately will determine because at the end of the day, if the project is shit, doesn't matter how cool the house is. The client's going to hate you. You're going to be on that list of 5 or 6 builders that aren't as good as, quote unquote, you.
So I think if this is a job for me, this is not a job for me for a lot of reasons. But if this were to be a job for me, a couple of things would have to happen here. I would need to educate them on the process. And if we were to say, hey, this is my process, this is typically how this looks, I'm willing to fast track this, there needs to be resources devoted to that. I need to make sure that I have the personnel and the money to do that. So I also want to fully explain and shed light on all the potential risks of doing this. But for me, it just comes down to education, right? That this client's excited, they want to jump at this, but it's also like, if this is your forever home, why? Right? Like, we can fast track this as much as possible, but there's certain aspects of this job or the pre-construction that I'm not comfortable fast tracking. You came to me because you haven't had the experience that you're looking for. You want this to be your forever home. This needs to be perfect. I'm on board with all of this. I'm on board with being a white glove service, handling everything. But I am slightly concerned with your timeline and how quickly you want to fast track this. And I can sit here and I can be the builder that's every other builder and going to tell you, absolutely, we can do it. We can turn this project around in 12 to 15 months from today without plans in place, but it's not going to be the forever home that you want to live in. If you are willing to have a conversation as to how we can fast track this as quickly as possible while still preserving my business, my ethos, and meeting your needs. Let's take the next step. Let's sit down and discuss what this job and process might look like. I need to map this out. But if you are absolutely bound to that timeline, that's going to be my biggest hurdle right now. And that's the conversation and the email response that I would have with the client. I'm going to maintain the expectation that I want to set forth throughout this job. I want to shed light on the fact that everyone's going to tell you this is doable, and I'm going to be the one guy who's going to tell you it's not. And this is why I think you should go with me. So I'm creating that differentiation there, and I'm guaranteeing that we'll be able to hit what their goals are for the execution of this job. It's just going to be impossible to do within their timeline. So that's my conversation with them. I'm not going to get as pumped about this job because for me, if there is no wiggle room on the timeline, it's a hard no for me.
It's funny. Well, it's interesting because we have a client that approached us exactly like this time. And we ultimately have not wasted a lot of time, but like we've spent a lot of time since we started talking because they simply haven't found a lot yet. And when reading through this, it's like it was very much driven by time and getting started, and like we need to make up time, like, and there was a real reason for it. And since we've started the conversation, that time has started to relax and realize like, hey, this takes what it takes. And thankfully, like, because we've been in other positions where it's it's not the case. It's like, let's just get started, and we will figure it out and kind of fill in the blanks as we go. And I mean, truthfully, the most difficult projects or difficult clients have I can relate them all back to exactly this, where it's like, let's just get started and keep design going as we're building, and I mean, I'll be truthful, and like we have one right now that's like this. The reality is like we're kind of starting construction with a very half-baked design. It's not so much that they want to get started for any other reason besides the fact that they just have the ability to not be in the house and we can kind of start the renovation process. But in doing it 2 years ago on an almost identical project, what we found was that despite it all coming out just fine, the client being extremely happy, like we looked internally and realized there was a lot of inefficiencies with the start-stop. So we're going into this one knowing that and understand, like trying to be cognizant of the fact that, hey, everything will be fine and the client's expectations will be met, but we're going to be in a position where we might have some start-stop time, and that's difficult when you're thinking about when you're running a business and planning manpower and even revenue projections.
Yeah. So one thing that I want to note, like obviously you can see Nick's considerations when looking at these jobs. So everyone is going to have different considerations based on your company, based on your workload, based on what your overhead is, right? How hungry you are. So what I'm saying in my perspective and how I'm analyzing and grading these leads doesn't mean it's right or wrong. I also want to note that any of these 4 leads could potentially be your ideal client and the best job, right? What appears to be the best from a lead may not be the best. Like the one that appears to be the worst, the client who could do it themselves, they just don't have time, may be your most successful, best client, most profitable, most enjoyable job. It's just typically that's not going to be the case. So we have a lot of leads that come in and we need to have a system for grading them. And I'm playing to my strong hand. I'm playing the cards that are dealt, and I'm trying to reduce my amount of risk and my amount of exposure. And my considerations for these leads are based on what works for me and what is trended to be successful jobs for me. What is my highest percentage of spending the least amount of resources and landing the job with the highest profitability that fits and aligns with my company? That's what I'm doing here. But that doesn't mean that these 4 leads are going to pan out that way. I'm playing the cards I'm dealt, and I'm looking to play percentages of what is the potential project. What's going to give me the greatest chance of landing the job that fits for me? But that's not always the case. So just keep that in mind as well, right? If you are slow and these are the type of leads that are coming in, they may wind up being your best clients. You just have to understand going into it, what are you hearing and what type of protection do you need to have in place if this doesn't wind up being a client that you want to get in bed with for the next 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 18 months, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like it's not going to be the same for everyone. Everyone has a different approach, and just a bad client for me might be a great client for somebody else.
Correct.
And I think that's one of the things that we need to realize is that not everyone is a good fit in both directions. I talk to our potential clients like about that. Hey, I need to make sure that you're a good fit for me and I'm a good fit for you. This isn't just, hey, am I going to be, because you're not hiring me just to produce work. It's not like this isn't a, hey, I just need you to come and do this service. It's like, well, no, this is more than that. There's a lot that goes into what we're talking about here, and I want to make sure I'm a good fit and vice versa. So,
well, I hope you guys and girls enjoyed the role playing today.
Yeah.
That's fun. Something different, right?
Something different. If you guys aren't on the newsletter, you're sleeping on it because, like I said, we're giving away a bunch of this, all these templates, all of the show notes, the forms, the actual tactical things. Number one that we're using in our business. Like if you're on YouTube, there's like, where's my camera? This is just my notes strictly on pre-construction. I mean, it's 114 pages that I printed out the other day of notes on our pre-construction process, and I have been slowly dripping that into the weekly newsletter. So sign up, moderncraftsman.co, sign up for the newsletter. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, you get all the notes from this pod. I mean, Nick sent me a message. He's like, dude, these show notes are like huge today, and I didn't really realize that. Some of it was copy and paste. But yeah, there's a lot of information here. So if you want it, sign up for the newsletter.